Maya Rodriguez had always been different from other girls in her small Texas town. While her classmates spent their weekends at the mall or gossiping about boys, she could be found at the local shooting range with her grandfather, a Vietnam veteran who taught her that respect was earned through skill, not given through pity. The morning she walked into the Army recruitment office, the laughter started immediately. 3 male recruits sat in plastic chairs, their eyes following her every movement as she approached the desk. Their snickers filled the sterile room like poison gas. "Lost, sweetheart?" asked Jake Morrison, a farm boy from Oklahoma whose biceps strained against his shirt sleeves. "The beauty salon is 3 blocks down." His buddies erupted in laughter. Tommy Chen, whose family had moved from California, shook his head in disbelief. "What's next? My little sister signing up for Navy SEALs?" The third recruit, Marcus Williams from Detroit, leaned back in his chair with a smirk. "Maybe she thinks this is summer camp. Wait until she finds out we don't serve cucumber sandwiches." Maya kept walking toward Sergeant First Class Patricia Wong, who sat behind the desk with the patience of someone who had witnessed this scene too many times. The sergeant's expression remained neutral, but Maya caught the slight tightening around her eyes. "I want to enlist," Maya said clearly, her voice cutting through the continued chuckling behind her. Sergeant Wong pulled out the necessary paperwork. "What's your interest, Miss Rodriguez?" "Infantry. Front lines." The laughter behind her grew louder. Jake Morrison stood up, his chair scraping against the linoleum floor. "Did she just say infantry? Honey, you sure you don't want to be a cook or maybe work in communications? You know, something more suitable?" Maya turned around slowly, her dark eyes meeting his pale blue ones. "I want to carry a rifle and serve my country." "Is there something funny about that?" Tommy Chen wiped tears from his eyes. "Oh man, this is rich. Wait until drill sergeants get a load of you. They'll send you home crying within a week. If you even make it through basic," Marcus added, crossing his arms. "My money says you'll quit before the first week is over." Sergeant Wong's voice carried authority that cut through the mockery. "Gentlemen, you might want to focus on your own paperwork instead of commenting on others." But the damage was already done. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, not from embarrassment but from anger. These boys saw her as entertainment, a joke to lighten their own nervousness about enlisting. They had no idea what she was capable of. "Listen, little girl," Jake said, his voice taking on a patronizing tone that made Maya's fists clench. "War isn't a game. People die out there. Real soldiers need to depend on each other, and we can't be worrying about protecting some princess who's playing dress-up." Maya's grandfather had warned her about men like this. Men who thought strength came from size alone, who confused volume with courage. She remembered his words, "Mija, the loudest dog in the pack is usually the most scared." "I didn't ask for your protection," Maya replied evenly. "I asked to serve my country." The room fell silent for a moment before Tommy broke it with another laugh. "Serve your country? What are you going to do, throw your purse at the enemy?" Even Sergeant Wong seemed to struggle with maintaining her professional demeanor. Maya could see the conflict in the older woman's face, the desire to shut down the harassment battling against the reality that these attitudes existed throughout the military. Maya completed her paperwork in silence while the 3 men continued their commentary. They questioned everything from her physical capability to her mental toughness, painting vivid pictures of her inevitable failure. With each comment, Maya's resolve only strengthened. "You know what the worst part will be?" Marcus said as Maya signed the final document. "When she gets some good soldier killed because she can't keep up. That's blood on her hands." Those words hit deeper than the others. Maya's pen stopped moving across the paper. The idea that she might endanger others was her greatest fear, one that had kept her awake many nights before making this decision. Jake sensed her hesitation like a predator smelling wounded prey. "See? She's already having second thoughts. Maybe this was all just attention-seeking behavior. Girls like her, they want the glory without the sacrifice." Maya stood up, her paperwork complete. She looked at each of the 3 men, memorizing their faces. "We'll see," she said simply. "Oh, we definitely will," Tommy replied with confidence. "This should be entertaining." As Maya walked toward the exit, she heard Jake call out one final insult. "Hey, Rodriguez. Don't forget to pack your makeup kit for basic training." Gotta look pretty for the enemy, right? The recruitment office door closed behind her with a definitive click, but their laughter seemed to follow her down the hallway. Maya stood on the sidewalk outside, watching traffic pass by while processing what had just happened. Her phone buzzed with a text from her grandfather. "How did it go, Mija?" Maya stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "I'm in, abuelo. Basic training starts in 6 weeks." She didn't mention the mockery or the doubt those men had tried to plant in her mind. Instead, she thought about her grandfather's stories of Vietnam, how he had earned respect not through talk but through action. How he had learned that the most dangerous enemies were often the ones who underestimated him. 6 weeks later, Maya found herself at Fort Moore, Georgia, standing in formation with dozens of other new recruits. The Georgia heat pressed down on them like a wet blanket as Drill Sergeant Rodriguez, no relation, despite the shared name, walked down the line of nervous faces. Maya spotted Jake Morrison 3 people down from her position. He had grown a weak mustache that made him look younger rather than older. Tommy Chin stood at attention 2 rows back, his California tan already fading under the harsh southern sun. Marcus Williams was nowhere to be seen, perhaps his bravado hadn't survived the actual commitment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Drill Sergeant Rodriguez announced, his voice carrying across the formation, "for the next 14 weeks, your previous lives don't matter. Your daddy's money doesn't matter. Your high school football trophies don't matter. The only thing that matters is whether you have what it takes to become United States soldiers." Maya felt a chill of anticipation despite the oppressive heat. This was where she would prove herself, where actions would speak louder than the cruel words from the recruitment office. The first week of basic training was designed to break down civilian thinking and build military mindset. Physical training began before dawn, when the Georgia air was still cool and thick with humidity. Maya had prepared for this moment her entire life without realizing it. All those mornings running with her grandfather, all those hours at the shooting range, all those lessons about mental toughness, they had been preparation for this test. While other recruits struggled with the early wake-up calls and constant physical demands, Maya adapted quickly. Jake Morrison, despite his earlier confidence, was struggling. His farm boy strength meant nothing when faced with the technical precision required for military exercises. During rifle training, his shots scattered across the target like he was throwing rocks at a barn. "Morrison!" Drill Sergeant Rodriguez barked. "My grandmother shoots better than that, and she's been dead for 15 years. Maya, meanwhile, was quietly excelling. Her groupings were tight, her stance textbook perfect, her breathing controlled. She had learned to shoot from a master, and it showed in every round she fired. Tommy Chen noticed her skill during a water break. "Damn, Rodriguez," he said, his earlier mockery replaced by grudging respect. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" "My grandfather," Maya replied simply, not elaborating on the hours of patient instruction or the philosophy behind marksmanship that the old veteran had shared. But it was Jake Morrison who still couldn't accept what he was seeing. "Probably had the target moved closer," he muttered to a group of recruits. "Or maybe Daddy paid for private lessons." His words revealed more about his own insecurity than Maya's ability. Each day, as Maya continued to excel and Jake struggled with basic military skills, his resentment grew. He had built his identity around being naturally superior to girls like Maya, and that foundation was cracking under the weight of reality. The defining moment came during the 3rd week of training. The platoon was practicing battle drills, working in small teams to assault mock enemy positions. Maya found herself paired with Jake and 2 other recruits for a squad movement exercise. The scenario was simple: advance through a wooded area, locate and neutralize an enemy position, and secure the objective. Maya was designated as the squad's rifleman, Jake as team leader despite his obvious shortcomings. "Okay, here's how we're going to do this," Jake announced as they prepared for the exercise. "I'll lead from the front, show you how real soldiers move. Rodriguez, you stay in the back and try not to get in the way." Maya bit back her response. Her grandfather had taught her that leadership was about results, not titles. She would follow orders, but she would also be ready when Jake's inexperience put the team in trouble. The exercise began with their squad moving through thick Georgia pine forest. Jake immediately made tactical errors that Maya recognized from her grandfather's lessons. He moved too quickly, made too much noise, and failed to properly use the natural concealment available. Within minutes, their position was compromised by the opposing force, drill sergeants acting as enemy soldiers. Blank ammunition cracked through the air as Jake's poor decisions put his team in an impossible situation. "Contact front!" Jake shouted, his voice cracking with panic. "Return fire!" But he had led them into a kill zone with no cover and no escape route. The exercise was effectively over before it began, another failure to add to Jake's growing list. Drill Sergeant Martinez, acting as the opposing force commander, emerged from his concealed position with a look of disgust. "Morrison, what the hell was that supposed to be? You just got your entire squad killed because you moved like a bull in a china shop." Jake's face flushed red with embarrassment and anger. "Sergeant, the terrain was difficult and the terrain was difficult?" Martinez interrupted. "Son, the terrain in Afghanistan doesn't care about your feelings. The enemy in Iraq won't give you a participation trophy for trying hard." Maya watched Jake's reaction carefully. She saw the exact moment when his embarrassment transformed into rage, and she knew that rage needed a target. His eyes found her standing at the back of the formation. "Maybe if my team was actually reliable," Jake said, his voice rising, "instead of being distracted by people who don't belong here in the first place." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. Maya felt every eye in the platoon turn toward her, felt the weight of assumption and prejudice pressing down on her shoulders. Drill Sergeant Martinez stepped closer to Jake, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Are you blaming your failure on your teammates, Morrison?" Jake's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water as he realized what he had said. But the damage was done. He had publicly questioned Maya's belonging, had suggested that her presence was a liability rather than an asset. "I just think," Jake continued, his voice smaller now but still defiant, "that some people need to prove they can handle the pressure before being given important responsibilities." Maya felt something cold settle in her chest. Not anger this time, but a crystalline clarity about what needed to happen. Jake Morrison had just challenged not only her ability but her right to serve. This wasn't about ego anymore, it was about proving that dedication and skill mattered more than gender or prejudice. "Morrison," Drill Sergeant Martinez said, his voice carrying across the entire platoon, "you just volunteered yourself for remedial training. Every morning at 0430, you'll be here practicing basic movements until you stop embarrassing yourself and the United States Army." As the platoon was dismissed, Maya caught Jake's eye one more time. The look he gave her was pure hatred, as if she were personally responsible for his public humiliation. She knew this conflict was far from over. That evening, as Maya cleaned her rifle in the barracks, Tommy Chin approached her bunk. "Hey, Rodriguez," he said quietly, "don't let Morrison get to you. Some of us are starting to see that you know what you're doing." Maya looked up from her weapon. "I'm not here to prove anything to Morrison. I'm here to become a soldier." Tommy nodded slowly. "Yeah, I'm starting to figure that out. My bad about the recruitment office. We were being jerks." It was the closest thing to an apology Maya expected to get, and she accepted it with a simple nod. But she knew the real test was still coming. Jake Morrison's pride had been wounded, and wounded pride in men like him often led to dangerous decisions. What none of them knew was that their performance was being watched by more than just drill sergeants. In a small office overlooking the training areas, a man in dress uniform was reviewing progress reports and video footage from the exercises. Colonel James Hartford had served in 3 combat deployments and had an eye for recognizing exceptional soldiers in development. Maya Rodriguez's file lay open on his desk, and the preliminary reports from her drill sergeants painted a picture of someone with unusual potential. But potential meant nothing without the right opportunity to prove it. Colonel Hartford made a note in Maya's file, a single line that would change everything: recommend for advanced assessment. Maya had no idea that her journey was about to take a turn that would test everything she believed about herself and her place in the military. The mockery from the recruitment office would soon seem like a distant memory compared to what lay ahead. The real test was coming, and it would require more than just skill with a rifle to survive. The advanced assessment notification came during the 8th week of basic training, delivered by Drill Sergeant Rodriguez with the same emotionless expression he used for everything from reveille to disciplinary action. "Private Rodriguez," he announced after morning formation, "report to Building 1247 at 1400 hours. Bring your gear." Maya felt the eyes of her platoon on her as she acknowledged the order. Jake Morrison's expression was particularly intense, his jaw working as if he were chewing on something bitter. He had been assigned to remedial training 3 more times since the disastrous squad exercise, each failure adding another layer to his resentment. "What do you think that's about?" Tommy Chen asked as they walked toward the mess hall for lunch. Maya shrugged, though privately she was curious too. Building 1247 was in the administrative section of the base, far from the training areas where recruits normally spent their time. "Probably some paperwork issue," she said. But Jake Morrison, walking close enough to overhear, had a different theory. "Maybe they finally figured out she doesn't belong here," he said loudly enough for half the platoon to hear. "About time someone came to their senses." Maya ignored him, but she noticed several recruits nodding in agreement. Despite her consistent performance, prejudice died hard. Some people would rather believe in conspiracy theories than accept that their assumptions might be wrong. At exactly 1,400 hours, Maya presented herself at Building 1247. The receptionist, a tired-looking sergeant with thick glasses, barely looked up from his computer. "Rodriguez? Room 204. They're waiting for you." The hallway was lined with military portraits and achievement displays that spoke of a long tradition of excellence. Maya's boots echoed on the polished floor as she made her way to the designated room. She knocked once and entered to find 3 people waiting for her. Colonel Hartford sat behind a metal desk, his dress uniform decorated with ribbons that told stories of combat and command. To his left stood a woman in civilian clothes whose alert eyes and confident posture screamed military intelligence. On his right was a man in camouflage fatigues with no visible rank insignia, which somehow made him seem more dangerous than the others. "Private Rodriguez," Colonel Hartford said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "Please, sit down." Maya sat at attention, her back straight and eyes focused on a point just above the colonel's head, standard position when addressing a superior officer. "Relax, Private," the colonel continued. "This isn't a disciplinary meeting. In fact, quite the opposite." He opened a file folder that Maya recognized as containing her training records. "Your performance has been exceptional across all metrics. Physical fitness, marksmanship, tactical understanding, leadership potential, you're scoring in the top 5% of recruits." Maya allowed herself a small moment of pride before responding. "Thank you, sir." The woman in civilian clothes leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about your grandfather, Private Rodriguez." The question seemed to come from nowhere, catching Maya off guard. "Ma'am? Your grandfather. Staff Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez, Vietnam veteran. Purple Heart recipient. Expert marksman instructor." The woman's voice was neutral, but Maya sensed intense interest behind the casual tone. "He taught you to shoot, correct?" "Yes, ma'am. Among other things." The man in camouflage fatigues spoke for the first time, his voice carrying a slight southern accent. "What other things?" Maya hesitated, unsure how much detail to provide. "Fieldcraft, sir. Basic tactics. Mental preparation for combat situations." Colonel Hartford made a note in the file. "Private, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the secret level. Do you understand what that means?" "Yes, sir. Information that could cause serious damage to national security if disclosed without authorization." "Exactly." The colonel closed the file and looked directly at Maya for the first time. "There's a special assessment program for soldiers who show exceptional promise early in their careers. It's designed to identify individuals who might be suitable for specialized roles within the military." Maya's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. "What kind of specialized roles, sir?" The woman in civilian clothes answered. "The kind that requires intelligence, adaptability, and the ability to perform under extreme pressure while maintaining absolute operational security." "Special forces?" Maya asked. The man in camouflage shook his head. "Different kind of special, Private. The kind where your official records might show you as working in logistics or communications, but your actual job description would be significantly more interesting." Maya felt a chill of excitement and apprehension. Her grandfather had hinted at similar programs during his own service, units that officially didn't exist but carried out missions that were vital to national security. Colonel Hartford reopened her file. "The assessment process is voluntary, Private Rodriguez. If you choose to participate, you'll be transferred to a different training facility for an indefinite period.
Your current classmates will be told you've been reassigned due to family emergency. If you successfully complete the assessment, opportunities will become available that most soldiers never even know exist. And, if I don't complete it successfully? Maya asked.
You'll return to regular training with no negative marks on your record, the woman replied. Though you'll be required to sign additional non-disclosure agreements about anything you might have observed during the assessment period. Maya thought about Jake Morrison and the others back in her platoon, thought about their expectations and prejudices. Then, she thought about her grandfather and the pride in his eyes when he told stories about serving his country. I'd like to participate, sir. Colonel Hartford smiled for the first time since she had entered the room. I hoped you would say that. He handed her a set of orders. Pack your gear. Transportation leaves at 0600 tomorrow. Maya read through the orders quickly. Her destination was listed only as Training Facility Echo, with no geographic indicators or additional details. Sir, what should I tell my drill sergeant about where I'm going? Tell him nothing, the man in camouflage said. He'll receive separate notification about your transfer. As far as anyone in your current unit knows, you received emergency leave for a family situation. As Maya prepared to leave, the woman in civilian clothes stopped her with one final question. Private, during your time in basic training, have you encountered any situations where your gender has been a factor in how others perceive your capabilities? Maya thought about the recruitment office, about Jake Morrison's constant undermining, about the whispered comments and skeptical looks. Yes, ma'am. Frequently. How has that affected your performance? It hasn't, ma'am. If anything, it's motivated me to work harder. The woman exchanged a look with Colonel Hartford. Good. You'll find that attitude very useful in the coming weeks. Maya returned to the barracks to find her platoon engaged in evening cleaning duties. She packed her gear quickly and, quietly, not wanting to draw attention to her preparations. But Jake Morrison noticed anyway. Going somewhere, Rodriguez? He asked with fake concern. Finally, giving up and going home to mommy? Family emergency, Maya replied, sticking to the cover story she'd been given. Jake's expression shifted to something that might have been sympathy if it weren't for the suspicious glint in his eyes. Nothing too serious, I hope? Maya finished packing without answering. Let him think whatever he wanted, she would probably never see him again anyway. Tommy Chen approached her bunk as she was securing her duffel bag. Hey, everything okay with your family? Maya appreciated the genuine concern in his voice. They'll be fine. Take care of yourself, Chen. You too, Rodriguez. Maybe we'll serve together again sometime. Maya hoped not. If this assessment led where she thought it might, her military career would take her far from conventional units and regular soldiers. She left Fort Moore before dawn, climbing into an unmarked van driven by a sergeant who didn't introduce himself and didn't seem interested in conversation. As the base disappeared behind them in the darkness, Maya felt like she was crossing an invisible line into a different world. The drive lasted 6 hours through rural Georgia and into the mountains of North Carolina. Maya dozed fitfully, waking occasionally to see dense forests and winding roads that seemed to lead nowhere in particular. Training Facility Echo turned out to be a cluster of buildings surrounded by high fences and situated in a valley that couldn't be seen from any public road. Maya counted at least a dozen other vehicles in the parking area, suggesting she wasn't the only recruit participating in this mysterious assessment. The sergeant who had driven her pointed toward a building marked only with the number 3. Report there. Someone will be waiting for you. Inside Building 3, Maya found herself in a reception area that looked more like a doctor's office than a military facility. Comfortable chairs, neutral lighting, and no visible military symbols or motivational posters. A woman in military fatigues sat behind a desk, but, like the man from yesterday, she wore no visible rank insignia. Private Rodriguez, the woman said without looking up from her computer. Right on time. Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly. Maya sat down and tried to assess her surroundings. Through a window, she could see other buildings scattered throughout the valley, some clearly designed for training purposes while others looked more like research facilities. Personnel moved between buildings with purpose but without the obvious military bearing she was used to seeing on conventional bases. After 20 minutes, a door opened and a man emerged who immediately commanded Maya's attention. He was tall and lean, probably in his late 30s, with prematurely gray hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Like everyone else she'd met here, he wore no rank insignia, but something about his bearing suggested significant authority.
"Miss Rodriguez," he said, extending his hand. "I'm David Mitchell. Welcome to Echo."
Maya shook his hand, noting the calluses and scars that spoke of extensive field experience.
"Thank you, sir. Just David will be fine. We're pretty informal here."
He gestured toward the door he'd come from.
"Shall we get started?" They walked through a maze of corridors that seemed designed to confuse visitors about the building's actual layout.
Maya tried to maintain her sense of direction but quickly gave up as they took multiple turns and passed through several security checkpoints.
"First things first," David said as they walked, "everything you see and hear from this point forward is classified. I mean everything. The color of the walls, the number of people you see, the type of coffee in the break room, all of it. Is that understood?"
"Yes, sir."
"David,"
Maya corrected herself.
He smiled. "Good.
Now, let me explain what you've gotten yourself into." They entered a briefing room with a large table surrounded by comfortable chairs. Maps covered the walls, but not the kind Maya was used to seeing in military facilities. These showed urban environments, industrial complexes, and what appeared to be floor plans of various buildings. "The program you're participating in," David began, "is designed to identify individuals with the potential for intelligence operations. Not the kind where you sit behind a desk analyzing data, but the kind where you might need to infiltrate a foreign organization, gather information in hostile territory, or carry out missions that officially never happened." Maya felt her heart rate increase. This was far beyond what she had expected when she enlisted.
David continued, "The assessment process will test everything you think you know about yourself.
Your physical capabilities, your mental resilience, your ability to think creatively under pressure, and, most importantly, your capacity to maintain operational security even when faced with extreme stress."
"How long does the assessment last?" Maya asked. "That depends on you. Some people wash out in the first week. Others take months to complete all the required evaluations.
There's no set timeline because we're not measuring you against a standard curriculum, we're measuring you against the unknowable challenges you might face in the field." David pulled out a file that looked similar to the one Colonel Hartford had shown her.
"Your background makes you an interesting candidate.
Military family tradition, but not the typical military family. Your grandfather's service record shows significant time in classified operations that he probably never discussed with you."
Maya's eyebrows rose.
Her grandfather had always been vague about certain aspects of his Vietnam service, claiming he did some reconnaissance work but never providing details.
"Carlos Rodriguez was what we would now call a special activities operator," David explained.
He spent 18 months behind enemy lines gathering intelligence and training local forces. The fact that he chose to teach you specific skills suggests he saw potential that others might miss.
"He never told me any of that," Maya said quietly. "He wasn't allowed to."
"But the skills he taught you, marksmanship, fieldcraft, mental preparation, those aren't the kind of things most grandfathers teach their granddaughters. He was preparing you for something, even if he couldn't tell you what." Maya thought about all those hours at the shooting range, all those camping trips where her grandfather taught her to move silently through the woods, to observe without being observed, to think several moves ahead of any situation. "Your performance at basic training confirms his judgment," David continued. "But basic training is kindergarten compared to what we do here."
"Are you sure you want to continue?" Maya thought about Jake Morrison and his sneer of certainty that she didn't belong.
She thought about the recruitment officer's barely concealed skepticism. She thought about everyone who had ever assumed she wasn't capable of something because of her gender or appearance. "I'm sure," she said. David nodded and closed the file.
"Then, let's begin. Your first assessment starts tomorrow at 0500.
Tonight, you'll be briefed on the scenario and given time to prepare." As they walked toward what David described as her quarters, a small but comfortable room that looked more like a hotel than military barracks, Maya realized she was about to discover capabilities she didn't know she possessed. The real test wasn't going to be about proving she belonged. It was about finding out what she was truly capable of becoming. The briefing room at 0500 hours contained 12 other candidates, each one studying Maya with the same curiosity she felt toward them. The group was more diverse than she had expected, men and women from different military branches, various ages and backgrounds, but all sharing the same alert intensity that marked professional soldiers. David Mitchell entered carrying a stack of folders and a coffee that smelled significantly better than anything Maya had encountered in military facilities.
Good morning, everyone.
I hope you slept well, because today begins what we call the simulation phase of your assessment. He distributed folders to each candidate.
Maya opened hers to find detailed background information on a fictional identity, Sarah Chen, graduate student in international relations at Georgetown University, currently researching economic development in Southeast Asia for her thesis. For the next 72 hours, David announced, you are no longer military personnel. You are the person described in your folder. You will eat, sleep, think, and act as that person. Your mission is to infiltrate a conference on international trade being held at a hotel in downtown Asheville. Maya scanned through her cover identity's details.
Sarah Chen had grown up in California, spoke Mandarin and Spanish, and had never served in the military. Her research focused on textile manufacturing in Vietnam, and she had a particular interest in labor rights issues. Your target, David continued, is Dr. Markus Volkov, a Russian trade attaché who will be attending the conference. Intelligence suggests he's using these academic gatherings to identify potential recruitment targets for foreign intelligence services. Your job is to get close enough to determine his methods and identify anyone who might be cooperating with him. One of the other candidates, a tall man who looked like he might be Navy, raised his hand.
Rules of engagement? Excellent question. You are civilians.
You have no official authority, no backup, and no weapons beyond what a graduate student might reasonably carry.
If you're compromised, you're on your own.
If you're arrested, we'll eventually figure out a way to help you, but it won't be quick or convenient.
Maya felt a thrill of excitement mixed with genuine fear.
This was closer to real intelligence work than anything she had imagined during basic training.
David pointed to a map on the wall. The conference starts this afternoon.
You have 4 hours to prepare your cover identity, memorize your background, and get into character.
Transportation to Asheville leaves at 1,000 hours.
As the other candidates filed out to begin preparations, Maya remained behind with questions burning in her mind. David, she said, this Dr.
Volkov, he's real, isn't he? This isn't just a training exercise.
David's expression didn't change, but Maya caught something in his eyes that confirmed her suspicion.
What makes you think that? Too much detail for a simulation.
And you wouldn't risk putting untrained candidates in contact with a real foreign intelligence officer unless the potential intelligence gain was worth the risk.
David nodded slowly. Very good.
Yes, Dr. Volkov is real, and he is exactly what we think he is. This conference provides us with an opportunity to observe his methods in a controlled environment, and your assessment provides you with an opportunity to contribute to an actual intelligence operation. Maya felt the weight of real responsibility settling on her shoulders.
What if I mess this up?
Then, you'll learn something valuable about yourself and about this work. But, based on your grandfather's training and your performance so far, I don't think you will.
The next 4 hours were the most intense preparation of Maya's life.
She memorized every detail of Sarah Chen's background, practiced speaking in the slightly different accent that a California graduate student might have, and studied everything she could find about textile manufacturing in Southeast Asia.
The transformation wasn't just intellectual, it was physical and emotional as well.
Maya found herself adopting different posture, different mannerisms, even different thought patterns as she became Sarah Chen. The clothes helped, civilian attire that made her feel vulnerable without her uniform but also strangely liberated. The bus ride to Asheville gave her time to observe her fellow candidates in their new roles. The Navy man had become a journalist specializing in maritime trade issues. A woman who looked like Air Force had transformed into a human rights lawyer researching labor conditions. Each of them was convincing enough that Maya might have believed their cover stories if she hadn't seen them in the briefing room. The International Trade and Development Conference was being held at the Grove Park Inn, a sprawling resort built into the side of a mountain overlooking Asheville.
Maya checked in as Sarah Chen, her hands only slightly trembling as she presented the false identification that had been provided.
Miss Chen, the desk clerk said with genuine warmth, we have you in room 347.
The welcome reception for conference attendees starts at 6 this evening.
Maya's room was comfortable but unremarkable, the kind of place where a graduate student might stay if her university was paying the bill. She used the afternoon to review her cover story one final time and to scout the hotel layout, identifying potential escape routes and observation positions that might be useful later. At exactly 6 o'clock, she entered the reception area dressed in business casual attire that made her look every inch the serious academic. The room buzzed with conversations in multiple languages as trade officials, researchers, and business representatives networked over wine and canapes. She spotted Dr. Marcus Volkov immediately. He was shorter than she had expected, with thinning brown hair and glasses that gave him a professorial appearance. Nothing about him suggested the intelligence operative that he supposedly was, which Maya realized was exactly the point.
Volkov was deep in conversation with a woman Maya didn't recognize, speaking in what sounded like French.
As she watched from across the room, she noticed his technique was subtle but effective. He listened more than he spoke, asked questions that seemed academic but were clearly designed to elicit personal information, and had a way of making his conversation partners feel like the most interesting people in the room. Maya approached the bar, ordering a glass of wine she had no intention of drinking, and positioned herself where she could observe without being obvious. Her grandfather had taught her that successful reconnaissance was 90% patience and 10% opportunism. Her opportunity came when Volkov excused himself from his conversation and walked toward the bar. Maya timed her approach perfectly, arriving at the same moment he did. "Excuse me," she said, letting her voice carry just a hint of nervousness, "but I couldn't help overhearing you mention textile regulations earlier."
"I'm Sarah Chen, I'm researching labor conditions in Vietnamese textile factories for my thesis." Volkov turned toward her with a smile that seemed genuinely pleased. "Ms. Chen, how delightful. Dr. Marcus Volkov, Russian Trade Mission. Your research sounds fascinating. Tell me, what specifically interests you about Vietnamese labor conditions?"
For the next 20 minutes, Maya maintained her cover while engaging in what appeared to be academic discussion but was actually a careful dance of information gathering.
Volkov was skilled, she had to admit.
He managed to learn about her supposed research interests, her university background, and even personal details about her fictional family without ever seeming intrusive.
But Maya was learning too.
She noticed how Volkov steered conversations toward personal struggles and financial pressures, how he expressed sympathy for the challenges facing young academics, how he casually mentioned opportunities for well-compensated consulting work for graduate students with the right expertise. "You know, Miss Chen," Volkov said as their conversation wound down, "I occasionally have need for researchers with your background. Nothing too demanding, just reviewing documents, providing cultural context for trade negotiations. The compensation is quite generous, especially for someone working on a graduate student budget." Maya felt a chill of recognition. This was exactly what she had been briefed to watch for, the initial recruitment approach that foreign intelligence services use to identify potential assets. "That sounds interesting," she replied, allowing Sarah Chen's financial concerns to show in her expression.
"What kind of documents?"
"Oh, nothing classified or sensitive.
Mostly economic analysis, cultural assessments, that sort of thing."
"Perhaps we could discuss it further over dinner tomorrow evening?
I know an excellent restaurant here in Asheville." Maya's training kicked in.
This was the moment that would determine whether she had successfully established herself as a potential target.
"I'd like that," she said.
"Though I should mention, I'll need to check with my thesis advisor about any outside work.
University policies, you know."
Volkov's smile never wavered, but Maya caught a flicker of something in his eyes, calculation, perhaps, or mild concern about her mentioning the consultation to others.
Of course. Academic integrity is paramount. Though perhaps we could keep our dinner conversation informal for now? Just two colleagues discussing shared interests?"
There it was, the subtle pressure to keep their interaction secret, disguised as professional courtesy.
Maya nodded agreement while mentally noting every word for her eventual debrief.
The reception continued for another 2 hours, during which Maya observed Volkov interacting with 6 other conference attendees. Each conversation followed a similar pattern, academic discussion leading to personal details leading to subtle offers of paid consulting work. She began to understand his method more clearly. He wasn't looking for immediate recruitment but rather building a network of potential assets who could be developed over time.
Maya returned to her room that evening with a notebook full of observations disguised as conference notes.
She had successfully made contact with her target, established herself as a potential recruitment candidate, and gathered intelligence on his operational methods. For her first real intelligence operation, she felt cautiously proud of her performance.
The next morning brought an unexpected complication.
As Maya entered the conference breakfast area, she saw a familiar face at a corner table that made her blood run cold. Jake Morrison sat wearing a badly fitting suit, attempting to blend in among the international trade professionals but looking exactly like what he was, a soldier playing dress-up.
Maya's mind raced through possibilities. Had he been selected for the same assessment program? Was this coincidence or something more sinister?
She quickly reviewed her cover identity, making sure nothing in her appearance or behavior would reveal her true identity to someone who knew her from basic training. Jake hadn't seen her yet, engaged as he was in an awkward conversation with what appeared to be a German trade official. Maya found a table where she could observe him while maintaining her own cover. His technique was clumsy compared to Volkov's subtle approach, too many direct questions, too much obvious interest in personal details, too eager to offer vague opportunities for financial gain. The German official excused himself after 10 minutes, clearly uncomfortable with Jake's approach.
Maya watched Jake's face flush with frustration as another potential contact slipped away.
Whatever role he was supposed to be playing in this operation, he was failing at it spectacularly. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message, "Conference room 12B in 10 minutes.
Urgent briefing."
She made her way to the designated room, wondering if Jake's presence was related to the urgent meeting. The room was empty except for David Mitchell, who looked considerably more tense than he had during previous briefings.
"We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Someone leaked information about this operation. Dr. Volkov knows he's being watched, and he's taking countermeasures." Maya's stomach dropped. "How do you know?" "He changed his entire schedule this morning.
Cancelled meetings, modified his approach to potential contacts, and started using counter-surveillance techniques that suggest he knows exactly what kind of operation he's facing."
"Do you know who leaked the information?" David's expression was grim.
"We have suspicions, but no proof yet.
What I need from you right now is a complete debrief of your interaction with Volkov last night.
Every word, every gesture, every impression you formed." Maya spent the next 30 minutes providing detailed information about her conversation with Volkov, his recruitment techniques, and the other conference attendees he had approached.
David took notes but seemed increasingly concerned as the debrief progressed.
"Your performance was excellent," he said when she finished. "Textbook intelligence gathering under a solid cover identity. Which makes what happened next even more troubling."
"What do you mean?"
David pulled out a transcript that Maya recognized as her conversation with Volkov, transcribed word for word with timestamp accuracy that suggested sophisticated surveillance equipment.
"Volkov recorded your entire conversation," David explained. "Not unusual for an intelligence officer to document potential recruitment contacts."
"But, look at this notation in the margin."
Maya leaned forward to read handwriting in Cyrillic script. Even without understanding Russian, the notation looked ominous.
"It translates roughly to possible military background despite cover story," David said. "Something about your behavior or responses made him suspicious that Sarah Chen wasn't who she appeared to be."
Maya felt a chill of professional failure.
"I thought I maintained cover effectively."
"You did, from our perspective. But Volkov has been doing this for 15 years. He picks up on subtleties that most people miss."
"The question is whether his suspicions are general, he thinks you might not be a real graduate student, or specific, he thinks you might be military intelligence." The distinction was crucial.
General suspicion might lead Volkov to simply avoid further contact with Sarah Chen.
Specific suspicion about military intelligence could compromise the entire operation and, potentially put Maya in physical danger.
"What are my orders?" Maya asked.
"That depends on how comfortable you are with risk," David replied. "We can extract you now, abort the operation, and write this off as a learning experience. Or you can keep your dinner appointment tonight and see if you can determine exactly what Volkov suspects and how much he knows." Maya thought about her grandfather, about the risks he had taken during operations that he could never discuss. She thought about Jake Morrison's clumsy performance that morning and how his presence might be related to the operational compromise. "I'll keep the appointment," she said. David nodded, but his expression remained troubled.
"There's one more thing you need to know.
The dinner location has been changed.
Instead of a public restaurant, Volkov has suggested a private dining room at a hotel outside the city. That's a significant tactical disadvantage for you." "Meaning?" "Meaning if things go wrong, you'll be isolated with limited options for escape or assistance.
We'll have surveillance teams in the area, but they won't be able to provide immediate support if the situation deteriorates.
Maya absorbed this information, understanding that David was essentially asking if she was willing to risk her life for the mission.
The thought should have terrified her, but, instead, she felt a calm certainty about her decision.
I understand the risks, she said. I want to complete the mission. David studied her face for a long moment before nodding. Very well.
But, there's one additional precaution we're taking. You'll be carrying emergency communication equipment disguised as normal personal items.
If you feel threatened at any point, you can signal for immediate extraction.
As Maya left the briefing room, she realized she was no longer participating in an assessment exercise. She was now an active intelligence operator facing real danger from a foreign agent who might have already identified her as a threat. The afternoon passed slowly as Maya prepared for what could be the most dangerous evening of her life. She reviewed her cover story repeatedly, practiced responding to various scenarios Volkov might present, and familiarized herself with the emergency communication procedures.
As evening approached, Maya dressed carefully in attire that suggested academic professionalism while allowing for physical movement if escape became necessary.
She checked the concealed communication device one final time before leaving her hotel room for what she hoped would not be her last mission. The restaurant Dr. Volkov had chosen was 40 minutes outside Asheville, nestled in a valley that cell phone signals struggled to reach. Maya arrived precisely on time, noting the tactical disadvantages David had warned about. The building sat isolated at the end of a winding mountain road, with only one obvious exit route and plenty of places where surveillance teams could be observed and neutralized. Volkov was waiting in the lobby, his earlier professorial appearance replaced by something harder and more calculating. His smile remained warm, but Maya noticed how his eyes catalogued every detail of her appearance and behavior.
Ms. Chen, punctual as always.
I've reserved a private dining room where we can discuss potential collaboration without interruption.
Maya followed him through a maze of corridors that seemed designed to confuse visitors about the building's layout.
The private dining room was elegant but felt more like an interrogation chamber, thick walls, no windows, and only one door.
Please, sit wherever you're comfortable, Volkov said, gesturing to a table set for two.
I took the liberty of ordering wine that pairs well with the chef's recommendations. Maya chose a seat that kept the door in her peripheral vision while allowing her to face Volkov directly. Her grandfather had taught her that positioning could be the difference between life and death in dangerous situations.
You know, Volkov said as he poured wine into crystal glasses, I did some research on your academic background after our conversation yesterday. Fascinating work you're doing on Vietnamese labor conditions.
Maya felt her heart rate increase but kept her expression neutral.
Thank you. It's a complex issue that doesn't get enough attention in academic circles. Indeed. Though I must admit, I found it curious that your university has no record of your current thesis topic.
According to Georgetown's graduate program database, Sarah Chen is listed as researching economic development in sub-Saharan Africa, not Southeast Asia. The bottom dropped out of Maya's world. Her cover identity had been compromised, but she couldn't tell how much Volkov actually knew.
Was this a fishing expedition or did he have definitive proof of her deception? I'm sorry? Maya said, allowing confusion to color her voice. That must be an administrative error. I changed my thesis focus last semester after my advisor suggested Vietnamese textile manufacturing would be more relevant to current policy discussions. Volkov nodded thoughtfully, swirling his wine as he studied her face.
Of course, administrative errors are common in academic institutions. Though I found it equally curious that your academic advisor, Professor Williams, is currently on sabbatical in England and has been for the past 6 months. Difficult to receive guidance from someone who's been out of the country since before you supposedly changed your thesis topic. Maya realized she was facing a master interrogator who had systematically dismantled her cover story while maintaining the pretense of casual conversation. Every question had been designed to test her responses against verifiable information. Dr. Volkov, she said carefully, I'm not sure what you're trying to imply, but I'm starting to feel uncomfortable with this line of questioning.
Please, call me Marcus. And, I apologize if I seem suspicious. It's an occupational hazard when you work in international trade. You develop a healthy skepticism about people who aren't exactly what they appear to be.
The waiter arrived with their first course, providing Maya with a moment to think.
Volkov's approach suggested he knew her cover identity was false but might not know her true identity or purpose.
She had to decide whether to maintain the charade, abandon it entirely, or try something more sophisticated. "Marcus," she said after the waiter left, "you're right to be suspicious.
Sarah Chin isn't exactly who she appears to be."
Volkov's eyebrows rose slightly, but his expression remained neutral.
"Oh?" Maya took a calculated risk. "I'm actually working as a freelance researcher for a private intelligence firm that specializes in economic espionage. We're investigating potential security vulnerabilities in the textile supply chain that could affect American companies operating in Southeast Asia." It was a plausible cover story that acknowledged deception while misdirecting attention away from her true purpose. If Volkov bought it, he might reveal his own agenda while believing he was dealing with a corporate spy rather than military intelligence. Volkov sat back in his chair, his wineglass suspended halfway to his lips. "Now that is interesting. And who exactly employs this private intelligence firm of yours?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss specific clients," Maya replied.
"But I think you can understand why textile manufacturers might be concerned about supply chain security, especially given recent tensions in Southeast Asia."
"Indeed I can." Volkov set down his wineglass and leaned forward slightly.
"In fact, it occurs to me that our interests might be more aligned than either of us initially realized."
Maya felt a surge of excitement.
If Volkov was about to reveal his own agenda, this mission could salvage valuable intelligence despite the compromised cover identity. "How so?" she asked. "The Russian trade mission has significant concerns about American economic intelligence gathering in regions where we have substantial business interests. If we could identify the methods and targets of firms like yours, it would help us protect our legitimate commercial activities." Maya realized she was being offered a chance to become a double agent, to provide information about American intelligence capabilities to Russian services while believing she was conducting corporate espionage.
It was an elegant recruitment approach that would appeal to someone motivated primarily by money.
"That sounds like it could be mutually beneficial," she said carefully.
"I thought you might see it that way."
"The compensation would be substantial, significantly more than whatever your current employer is paying. And the work would be largely analytical rather than operational, much safer for someone in your position."
Maya nodded thoughtfully while her mind raced through implications.
This conversation was providing exactly the kind of intelligence about foreign recruitment methods that her mission was designed to gather. "I'd need to know more specifics," she said.
"What kind of information would you be looking for?"
"Nothing that would compromise American national security," Volkov assured her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Simply information about corporate intelligence gathering, which companies are targeted, what methods are used, which personnel are involved in operations."
Maya understood that every detail Volkov was requesting would indeed compromise national security by revealing intelligence sources and methods.
She also realized that her willingness to discuss the offer was being interpreted as evidence of her amenability to recruitment. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the main course and a new waiter, a young man who moved with the controlled grace that Maya recognized as military bearing. As he arranged their plates, he caught her eye briefly and gave an almost imperceptible nod.
David's surveillance team had infiltrated the restaurant staff.
Maya felt a surge of relief knowing that backup was nearby, even though immediate assistance would still be impossible in this isolated dining room. "You know," Volkov said after the waiter left, "I have to admit something to you, Sarah."
Or whatever your real name might be. Maya's blood chilled. "I'm sorry?" "I've known since yesterday evening that you're not a Georgetown graduate student researching Vietnamese textile manufacturing. The question that interests me is whether you're corporate intelligence, academic fraud, or something more sophisticated." Maya realized that Volkov had been playing a game several levels more complex than she had understood. He had known her cover was false from the beginning and had used their conversation to try to determine her true affiliation and purpose. "I'm not sure what you're implying," she said, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew the pretense was futile. Volkov reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a photograph that made Maya's heart stop. It showed her in military fatigues during basic training, clearly identifiable despite the distance from which it had been taken. "Private Maya Rodriguez," Volkov said calmly, "United States Army, recently transferred to a classified training program that officially doesn't exist." Granddaughter of Staff Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez, Vietnam veteran with an interesting history in special operations.
Maya stared at the photograph, understanding that she had been compromised from the moment she arrived at the conference.
"Where did you get this?" From someone who was very eager to provide information about American intelligence training programs.
Someone who felt that certain people were receiving opportunities they didn't deserve and was willing to share details about those people with foreign intelligence services.
Maya's mind immediately went to Jake Morrison and his presence at the conference.
His clumsy attempts at intelligence gathering suddenly made sense. He hadn't been participating in the same assessment. He had been working for Volkov, providing information about American operations in exchange for whatever the Russian agent had offered him.
"You're talking about treason," Maya said quietly. "I'm talking about business," Volkov replied.
"Your colleague was facing significant financial pressures, student loans, family medical bills, the usual problems that affect young Americans.
We simply offered a solution that benefited everyone involved."
Maya felt sick thinking about Jake Morrison selling out his own country, his own fellow soldiers, for money. But she also realized that Volkov's revelation gave her valuable intelligence about the extent of Russian penetration into American military training programs.
"What do you want from me?" she asked.
"The same thing I wanted from Mr. Morrison, information about American intelligence training and operations."
"You're in a much better position to provide valuable intelligence than he was.
Your success in the assessment program gives you access to information and personnel that would be very useful to Russian intelligence services." Maya understood that she was being offered the same choice Jake Morrison had faced: betray her country for money or face the consequences of refusing. But, unlike Morrison, she had been trained by her grandfather to understand that honor was worth more than personal comfort.
"And if I refuse?" Volkov's smile disappeared entirely.
"Then, you'll find yourself in a very difficult situation. You see, this restaurant is quite isolated, and accidents can happen on mountain roads, especially late at night when visibility is poor." Maya felt the communication device in her jacket pocket and considered her options. She could signal for extraction, but that would end the operation without gathering additional intelligence. She could continue the conversation to learn more about Volkov's methods and Morrison's betrayal, but that would mean accepting increased risk to her personal safety.
Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. "Mija, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite the fear."
"I need time to think about your offer," Maya said.
"Of course. But not too much time.
I'll be leaving Asheville tomorrow evening, and I'd prefer to resolve our business before then, but..."
As the evening continued, Maya gathered as much information as possible about Volkov's operation, Morrison's level of involvement, and the methods used to compromise American personnel.
Each detail could be crucial for protecting future operations and identifying other potential security breaches. But she also understood that she was walking a tightrope between gathering intelligence and becoming a target for elimination. Volkov had revealed too much for her to simply walk away, and her refusal to cooperate would likely result in permanent measures to ensure her silence. The evening ended with Volkov's driver offering to take her back to her hotel, an offer that Maya politely declined, claiming she had arranged her own transportation. As she waited in the restaurant lobby for David's surveillance team to provide extraction, she realized that her first intelligence operation had become far more complex and dangerous than anyone had anticipated.
The assessment was no longer about proving her capabilities.
It had become about surviving long enough to report what she had learned about foreign intelligence penetration of American military programs and the betrayal of a fellow soldier who had chosen money over honor. Maya's extraction from the restaurant happened at precisely 2,347 hours, executed by a team that appeared to be routine maintenance workers checking the building's security system. She was quietly escorted through a service entrance to a van that looked identical to dozens of other commercial vehicles on mountain roads that night. David Mitchell was waiting in the back of the van with equipment that looked more like a mobile command center than anything Maya had expected. Multiple screens showed satellite imagery, communication intercepts, and real-time tracking of various targets throughout the Asheville area.
"Debrief starts now," David said without preamble as the van began moving toward an unknown destination. "Everything Volkov said, everything you observed, every detail that might be relevant to operational security." For the next hour, Maya provided a comprehensive account of her evening with Volkov, including his recruitment approach, his knowledge of her true identity, and, most critically, his revelation about Jake Morrison's betrayal. David's expression grew progressively grimmer as the full scope of the security breach became apparent. "Morrison provided more than just information about you," David said when Maya finished her report.
Based on what Volkov revealed, he's given Russian intelligence detailed information about our assessment program, our training facility locations, and the identities of other candidates currently undergoing evaluation. Maya felt sick thinking about her fellow candidates, realizing they were all now at risk because of one man's betrayal.
How long has Morrison been working for them?
We're still piecing that together, but preliminary evidence suggests the recruitment began during basic training. Morrison's financial pressures made him an ideal target, and his resentment toward candidates like you provided additional motivation for cooperation. The van pulled into what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse, but Maya quickly realized it was another classified facility. As they walked toward the building, David continued briefing her on the situation.
Volkov's operation is more extensive than we initially understood.
He's been using academic conferences as cover for recruitment operations across the southeast, targeting military personnel who attend under various cover identities.
Morrison's information allowed him to identify and approach several of our people.
Inside the facility, Maya found herself in a situation room that looked like something from a spy movie. Wall-mounted displays showed photographs, organizational charts, and timelines mapping the extent of Russian intelligence penetration into American operations.
Colonel Hartford was waiting with two other officers Maya didn't recognize.
His expression was a mixture of professional concern and personal disappointment that one of his soldiers had betrayed the uniform. "Private Rodriguez," Colonel Hartford said, "your performance tonight exceeded all expectations. The intelligence you gathered about Volkov's methods and Morrison's activities is crucial for protecting ongoing operations and identifying other potential security breaches." Maya felt a surge of pride, but it was tempered by the reality of Morrison's betrayal.
"Sir, what happens to Morrison now?"
"That's classified above your current security clearance," one of the unknown officers replied. "But I can tell you that appropriate measures are being taken to limit the damage from his activities."
David pulled up a chair beside Maya. "What happens next depends on your decision about continuing with this program.
Tonight proved you have exceptional potential for intelligence operations, but it also demonstrated the very real dangers involved in this work."
Maya thought about Volkov's threats, about the isolated restaurant and the implications of refusing his recruitment offer.
She also thought about Morrison's choice and the path that had led him to betray everything he had sworn to protect. "I want to continue," she said without hesitation. Colonel Hartford smiled for the first time since she had entered the room.
"I hoped you would say that."
"Because we have a proposition that will require someone with your particular combination of skills and courage." One of the unknown officers stepped forward, introducing himself as General Patricia Chen.
Maya recognized the surname and realized this might be related to her cover identity from the Volkov operation.
"Private Rodriguez," General Chen said, "the intelligence you've gathered suggests that Russian operations against our personnel are more sophisticated and extensive than we previously understood. We need someone to infiltrate their network and gather information about their methods, targets, and long-term objectives." Maya felt her heart rate increase as she understood the implications.
"You want me to accept Volkov's recruitment offer?"
"Not exactly," David replied.
"We want you to disappear."
General Chen activated a wall display that showed a complex operational timeline. In 3 days, Maya Rodriguez will be reported as having suffered a fatal training accident during a classified exercise. Her body will never be recovered due to the sensitive nature of the location where the accident occurred. Maya stared at the timeline, understanding that they were proposing to erase her official existence.
"What happens to the real me?"
"You become someone else entirely," General Chen explained.
"New identity, new background, new life history."
"You'll be inserted into a position where Volkov or his associates will eventually try to recruit you, but this time you'll have better preparation and support."
David pulled out a thick folder labeled with a name Maya didn't recognize.
"Meet Dr. Elena Vasquez, Professor of International Economics at the University of North Carolina. Recent divorce, struggling with debt, beginning to question the value of her academic career."
Maya opened the folder to find a complete life history more detailed than anything she had seen before.
Birth certificates, school records, employment history, social media accounts, everything needed to create a believable human being who never actually existed.
"The timeline for this operation is measured in years, not months," General Chen warned.
"You would maintain your cover identity indefinitely, slowly building the kind of access and reputation that Russian intelligence finds attractive in potential assets."
Colonel Hartford added his own warning. "This isn't assessment anymore, Private Rodriguez.
This is permanent assignment to a classified program that officially doesn't exist. You would have no contact with your previous life, no communication with family or friends from your time as Maya Rodriguez. Maya thought about her grandfather and the stories he couldn't tell about his own service. She thought about the pride in his eyes when he taught her about honor and sacrifice. She thought about Morrison's choice and the consequences of putting personal comfort above duty to country. What would my mission objectives be, she asked.
David pulled up another display showing a complex network diagram.
Primary objective, identify and map Russian intelligence networks operating against American military and intelligence personnel. Secondary objective, provide false information designed to protect American operations and personnel. Tertiary objective, identify opportunities to neutralize foreign intelligence operations against American interests. General Chen stepped closer to Maya, her expression serious. This assignment comes with risks that extend far beyond what you face tonight. Foreign intelligence services don't simply dismiss assets who fail to produce results. They eliminate security threats permanently. Maya understood that they were asking her to spend years living a lie, constantly in danger from the very people she would pretend to serve. It was a level of sacrifice that few people would consider and even fewer would accept. How would I maintain contact with my handlers, she asked. Dead drops, coded communications, and periodic meetings disguised as academic or personal activities, David replied. Full protocols would be part of your extended training before insertion into your cover identity. Maya looked around the room at the faces of people who had dedicated their careers to protecting American interests through operations that would never be publicly acknowledged. She thought about the mockery she had faced in the recruitment office, the certainty of people like Morrison that she didn't belong in this world. There's one more thing you need to know, General Chen said quietly.
The assessment you've been undergoing isn't just about your potential for intelligence work.
It's been designed to identify candidates for a specific program that requires individuals capable of deep cover operations lasting multiple years. Maya realized that everything from her selection for assessment through the Volkov operation had been designed to test her suitability for this exact mission. The mockery, the challenges, the doubts, they had all been preparation for this moment of choice. What's the name of this program? She asked.
General Chan's answer sent chills down Maya's spine, Black Talon. Maya remembered Jake Morrison's sneering certainty that she would quit, his assumption that she was seeking attention rather than genuine service. She thought about Volkov's smooth confidence that financial pressure and personal comfort would overcome patriotic duty. She thought about everyone who had ever assumed she wasn't capable of real sacrifice because of her gender or appearance. I accept the assignment, she said clearly. General Chen nodded slowly. Very well. Maya Rodriguez will officially die in a training accident 72 hours from now. Dr. Elena Vasquez will begin her new position at the University of North Carolina 6 months later, after extensive preparation and training. As Maya left the facility that morning, she understood that her life as she had known it was ending. Maya Rodriguez would become a memory, a closed file, a training accident that claimed another promising soldier. Elena Vasquez would take her place, living a carefully constructed lie in service of protecting the country that Maya Rodriguez had sworn to defend. 3 months later, a young woman with different hair, different mannerisms, and a different accent entirely walked into a faculty meeting at the University of North Carolina. Dr. Elena Vasquez was everything Maya Rodriguez had appeared to be: intelligent, dedicated, and slightly naive about the darker realities of international affairs. But, beneath Elena's carefully constructed facade, Maya Rodriguez remained fully operational, waiting for the moment when Russian intelligence would approach with offers of money and cooperation. When that moment came, she would be ready with a response that Volkov and his associates would never expect. The Black Talon program had gained its newest operative, and the woman who had once been mocked for asking for a rifle now carried weapons far more dangerous than any firearm: the ability to disappear completely while remaining fully operational in the shadows where America's most vital interests were protected by people whose names would never appear in history books. Jake Morrison would eventually face military justice for his betrayal, but he would never know that his mockery had helped forge one of America's most effective deep cover operatives. The girl he had dismissed as unsuitable for military service had become something far more dangerous than he could have imagined: a ghost in the machine of foreign intelligence operations, protecting the very people who had once doubted her capabilities. In the end, Maya Rodriguez had proven that the most effective soldiers are often the ones who are consistently underestimated by their enemies and allies alike.
Her greatest weapon wasn't her marksmanship or her tactical skills, it was the ability to make people believe she was something other than what she truly was. And, in the dangerous world of international intelligence, that ability was more valuable than any rifle ever manufactured.